wondered what might happen to the world if we don't stop polluting it? Ever seen a man with gills drink his own urine? Ever thought you might have had a childhood crush on Dennis Hopper? Just me? Okay.
Hello and welcome back to the attic with me, Lou. I hope everyone's doing all right. I'm doing average, but you know what I feel great about? Is the 1995 aquatic classic, Waterworld. First of all, who else was obsessed with this movie back in the day? Because it's one that me and my siblings used to rent from the video shop all the time, because it's quintessential action-adventure, but in that 90s family-friendly kind of way. And what I mean by that is that the kids all love it, but Dennis Hopper does lose an eyeball, and you see the hole. That's not a spoiler, it's just a fact. I want to say that this movie is pure escapism, but actually it works really hard to hammer home the impending threat that climate change poses. So it's rip-roaring fun, but with a not-so-hidden agenda.
The future. The polar ice caps have melted, covering the Earth with water.
So yeah, basically the world as we know it is underwater, and all the remaining survivors live on rafts or these floating towns known as atolls, and dry land has become something of a myth or a legend. On one of the atolls lives this little girl called Enola, who has a tattoo on her back that is supposedly a map to dry land. And there's these pirates known as smokers who invade the area with the hopes of stealing said child because they want the back map. Kevin Costner, an ill-tempered mutated seaman, just so happens to be in the area at the time. He comes to trade wares, and the townsfolk tried to kill him purely because he's got gills and webbed feet.
Gills.
Actually, they want to recycle him, which kind of looks like drowning in a pool of human waste. So that's pretty grim. But Enola's guardian, Helen, decides to free him on the condition that he take her and the child with him on his boat, which he does. And it's that classic dynamic where he hates them because they take up all his space and they're super annoying, and he's super grouchy, and they are kind of annoying. But eventually they all get along like one happy little family. It's not all fun and games, mind you, because the smokers pursue them for the duration of the movie. So there's plenty of thrills and action, and just because it's set at sea doesn't mean there can't be explosions, and explosions there are aplenty. Mate, I am sweating so much right now. There's a waterworld behind the back of my knees, honestly. Climate change is real, bruh. It's real. What I like about this film is that while it's very much a product of the time and everything you might expect it to be, you've got to give it some points for originality, because we've seen a lot of post-apocalyptic landscapes. We've seen a lot of post-apocalyptic landscapes, but they're usually on the drier side, you know, a lot of dust or a crumbling city or what have you. So to set something like this completely at sea is quite novel, in my humble opinion. It's not massively original in a lot of other ways. It's pretty conventional as far as characters and plot goes. And apparently it's a rip-off of Mad Max, but I wouldn't really know because I haven't seen the Mel Gibson ones. But when I say it's a product of the time and everything you might expect it to be, what I mean by that is that during the 90s, there were a lot of blockbusters coming out that were obsessed with natural disasters and or the threat of the world ending. This could be due to the fact that people's awareness of environmental issues was expanding, which explains why Waterworld focuses so heavily on that. But the millennium was also around the corner, and people were freaking the crap out because they thought that the world was going to implode or reset itself or whatever. So what a time to be alive, eh? Another reason this movie is maybe a little bit familiar is because it was directed by Kevin Reynolds, who had previously directed Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which also starred Kevin Costner in the leading role. The soundtrack is reminiscent of just about every bloody epic score that was knocking around at the time. And just generally, the script, the set design, the stunts, the cast, the lack of diversity, it's just very on brand for the 90s. So yeah, you've got Kevin Costner as the leading man. No surprise, he's great. It's what he does. And as I mentioned, he's introduced with this hard shell. No, not a literal shell. Although he is part fish.
Merman.
The character doesn't have an official name. Some call him the Mariner. I'm gonna keep calling him Kevin. So Kevin is a dealer of dirt, which sounds sordid, but actually he does trade dirt because it's a precious commodity now that land is no longer a thing.
How'd you come by so much of it?
Another atoll 30 horizons west of here.
Where'd they get it?
They didn't say.
He lives off of his own resources. He's got a little fruit plant and a purifying pump so that he can drink his own piss. And everything on his boat is mechanically powered by wind or weight, so his carbon footprint is non-existent. Really, we should all be taking notes from Kevin. And going back to his metaphorical shell, he starts off as a loner with a big old guard up.
You don't like my singing, do you? Mom says you don't like my singing because you can't sing.
With a little female attention and some time with the little one. And he's a big old softie, really. I also enjoy the myriad of unnecessary acrobatic stunts that his character performs. Why walk when you can roly-poly, you know? I love it. I thrive on the spectacle. And speaking of spectacles, there was that really epic stunt show spectacular at Universal Studios. Is that still going? Because that was epic. But if, like me, you love drama, you love chaos, you love yourself some choreographed conflict, then you will love the baddies in this movie. You want to take a film about global warming and really rub it in the audience's face, then you best make your villains the ultimate polluters. And that is exactly what the smokers are. They ride jet skis, they fly planes, they pump bullets from machine guns, they smoke constantly. Like, cigarettes are flying around. There's even one character who smokes whilst wearing an oxygen cannula. And to make it even more on the nose, their base is on the remains of the Exxon Valdez, which is a real-life oil tanker that spilled a huge amount of crude oil into the ocean in 1989. And they've got a framed picture of Joseph Hazelwood, who was the captain at the time of the spill, and he's basically their hero. So yeah, these chaotic savages are out here emitting all sorts of pollutants. Proudly. They're also just rude and mean, but none more so than their leader, the Deacon, played by Dennis Hopper, who is just delightful in how undelightful he is in this role. Not just because of his grotesque appearance at times,
It does look like shit.
but because his character is just hideously selfish and cutthroat.
So which way we rolling?
I don't have a goddamn clue. Don't worry. They'll roll for a month before they figure out I'm faking it.
And Dennis Hopper has notoriously played the villain on more than one occasion, and there's a reason. And it's because he finds that perfect balance between horrendously sadistic and comedically charming.
Should make fun of him. He wouldn't like it.
Girl, I don't give a shit what he'd like. He took out my eye. And if I ever see him again, I'm gonna cut open his head and I'm gonna eat his brain. You think he'd like that?
And I love the Deacon a lot. So much so that I used to tell people that I fancied Dennis Hopper when I was a child. And I'd only seen him in this and Speed at the time. So make of that what you will. But he is the perfect action baddie. He represents all things unwholesome, which is a perfect contrast to the innocence and purity that radiates from the prodigal child that he's trying to capture.
Hey, you know how to fly an airplane? Lucky I do, huh? Ow! Hey, you stop it! You behave yourself now!
Enola is naive and sweet, if not a little irritating, mainly because she keeps stealing Costner's crayons and drawing on his boat, which is a little disrespectful, if you ask me. But he forgives her, so It's all good. She's played by a young Tina Majorino, who I love because of Napoleon Dynamite, but she was also in a couple of childhood classics like Alice in Wonderland and Andre. Now, you want to talk about 90s nostalgia? Let's acknowledge the tidal wave of movies that came out that were about kids befriending aquatic animals. Because that was a whole thing. But yeah, Enola is small but mighty, and she gives the smokers a run for their money. And I appreciate that.
He's not bluffing. He never bluffs.
Shut up!
Then we have Helen, who's fine. She kind of serves a purpose. Not much of one. Like, she's Enola's guardian, but it's Kevin's relationship with Enola that we end up caring about the most. So she's mostly just there to fall in love with Kevin, so that we fall in love with Kevin. Because who can resist a man that teaches a child how to swim? Even if he did smack you over the head with a sail and violently cut all your hair off. The heart wants what it wants. And of course, Jean Triplehorn is beautiful to look at, but unfortunately her body acts as currency on a couple of occasions, or almost does because it's a PG-13. But yeah, she's there, and she's pretty. And sometimes she's naked, but my favourite thing that she does is when she says, "Make me some food!" Because it reminds me of the food. There's a few more familiar faces throughout. If you blink, you might miss Jack Black as a pilot on the Smoker's plane. So that's fun, you know, if you like Jack Black. A few other highlights include the horrendous accent from Kim Coates as the unhinged drifter.
Let yourself believe her. I'm going there now, don't you?
I think he's supposed to be Irish, but I'm not entirely sure. Where's the plane? I like that scene where they eat the giant mutated shark. Why is it giant and why is it mutated? I don't know, but it looks tasty and it makes me hungry. The use of the Peter Gunn theme when the smokers are driving around inside the tanker.
Let's drive.
Like, you know, that would have been badass back in the day. Plus they're driving indoors just because, and there's a bumper sticker that says "Nuke the whales." Like, how evil can you get? One of the best scenes actually is when the smokers invade the atoll towards the start. I think that's what the stunt show was based on. It's pretty cool. However, without giving too much away, there is a big old showdown towards the end on the tanker, and that's pretty fun. Kevin Costner gets his time to shine, and there's a lot of stunts and pyrotechnics, so yeah, that's good. The production value for this movie is humongous. It must have been crazy expensive to make.
Sweet merciful crap!
There's not a whole lot of CGI used. There is some, but most of the effects are practical. You know, the sea is real, the set's real, the explosions are real, and I find that so much more exciting because, you know, I live for tangibility, me. So it's definitely a style of movie that doesn't get made anymore, for better or for worse. It's a genre that still exists, but is made and presented in a very different way today. So I do think that time has actually done this movie a favour, because whether you've seen it before or whether you haven't, if you like the kind of films that were coming out around the same time that look and feel similar, then you'll probably vibe with it for nostalgic reasons, if nothing else. I'm not saying that it's the best film ever made, but I do think it's great. And if you like that type of movie, then I highly recommend it. That being said, I'm a sucker for a 90s blockbuster. And Dennis Hopper, apparently, so there you go. But that's all the time I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm gonna go take some swimming lessons and harvest some dirt while I still have the chance. But until the next time, be safe, be sexy, reduce, reuse, recycle, and I will see you at the end of the world. Thank you for your time.